So maybe if you could just start, just tell me your full name, your maiden name, and then your married name.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You start?
Yeah.
Oh, my name is Jeanne Aiko Miyagishima, Turnage. Live in Denver, Colorado since 1946 August, since we were discharged from Gila Camp Butte. And so we've lived here ever since.
Tell me about who your parents' names and then your siblings.
My parents' name?
Yeah, your parents' names and your siblings and where you are
Oh.
in the siblings.
Both of my parents came from Shizuoka, Japan. He was here first. He was only 15, and he secretly came to this country and was employed by a fairly wealthy family where he learned English. And apparently a year later was the earthquake. And I think that's why he probably left San Francisco and he ended up in Salt Lake, where there were some Japanese communities there. And then he heard about the railroad were hiring Japanese and Chinese workers. So he found himself in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. He went to the railroad and he found that they needed I guess you call them vendor, to buy groceries, tools and whatever kinds of things that the workers needed. So that became his job as a person that I think at a young age he was more business-minded. This is in the early 22s or late 1900s.
In Salt Lake.
Yeah. So
How did he meet his wife?
my mother,
Yeah.
yeah, she came to this country from Shizuoka at the age of 14 or 15, as I remember, with her family. And they ended up in northern Colorado, mostly around Windsor or Hill Roads, where my aunt was born.
This is pre-war.
Oh yeah, this is in the 20s. And so somehow they found their way to Nebraska. And it's hard to know I think they have communications, between people. And I think there were a lot of Shizuoka people in Nebraska. So they ended up there, and then my dad was 10 years older than my mother. But they met each other and married and had a bunch of kids, yeah.
In Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
So how did they end up in camp?
Well, my father had a grocery store, kind of as a result of him being this vendor. And he sold insurance for National Farm Bureau, New York Life, and did a lot of things. He'd order groceries from Denver and San Francisco. And this one day, they had pretty much of a blizzard like they always have there. And my dad was delivering rice, because a lot of his customers live out in the country. And he got sick, he got pneumonia. So apparently they hospitalized him and did some testing, found out he had tuberculosis. So that ended his venture in Scottsbluff as being a businessman. So my uncle had purchased a farm in Terminus, California. And my dad said, well, he could come and help him with the business part of. So I guess he moved all of us there to Terminus, and then
What year was that?
they didn't quite do it for our family, so we moved to Stockton.
What year was that?
Yeah, Stockton, California. So I remember starting school there, and it didn't seem like it was very long after. You see, I was in the third grade when I was in Scottsbluff. So anyway,
So how old were you in Stockton?
how long?
How old?
I was probably 7 or 8, and I recall my mother said we could go to school, but we had to come straight home. And then that Sunday, Pearl Harbor Day, we were in our house. We had an extra room where we just kind of laid around, or reading the newspaper and looking at the funnies. And we had the radio on, and my dad was just so upset when he heard about Pearl Harbor. And he had become so Americanized, and he didn't even want us to go and learn Japanese. He said, "You're Americans." He said, "You learn everything in English." Yeah, so anyway, then the war broke out, and because my father had tuberculosis, he had to go to the French camp sanitarium for tuberculosis. And then we were all sent to Stockton Assembly Center, and which was a racetrack, where they had all these stables, and they built, I don't know how fast they were able to do it, but they built some barracks there. Apparently they whitewashed the stalls and had people assigned to living there. And my sister Gladys said that there was a lady who just had a baby, and they had her assigned to one of those places, and you can't clean a horse stall, make it livable. So my mother asked her if she would want to trade places, because we had a place in the barracks. And see, that's how much discretion they use when they assign people. So my brother Al said he didn't recall that, but then my other sister did, so.
Okay, so you saw a photograph of Eleanor Roosevelt inside the book. So maybe you can kind of think back about that day and just recount even your thoughts and your feelings about being in proximity of Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah. I think because they knew she was coming, I think there were kids my age, some classes, that were able to go see her. I don't recall the building or anything that she was, but she was there, and God, we were just all excited, I think at that age you don't know whether to like or dislike, but just that she was the president's wife and she came to visit us. And she was so sweet, I thought. Smiled, and she was touchy, and I just thought that was the biggest experience as a child, to be able to stand that close to the First Lady. And because of that, I've always admired her, just because of her presence there, that she even wanted to come and see what was going on and what kind of condition that we were living in. So I don't know any aftermath information that ever came out after that, but I have several Gila kind of like annuals. I can bring one to you, because I have my sister's copy.
So you have extras.
Yeah.
What do you think about the whole idea that it was the president who actually signed Executive Order 9066? And that, have you ever thought about that? Sort of like, and that's his wife.
What did I think of her coming there?
Well, the idea that it was the president, her husband, signed the executive order that
Yeah.
actually caused everyone to be incarcerated, but then she
Mm-hmm.
came.
I guess at that time, you were so ignorant of so many things. And I don't even know who signed the papers to send us at that age. You just knew she was the president's wife, and she cared enough to come and see us. But that was the extent of what my thoughts were at that time.
No, that's
And
it's just an interesting thing. Can you tell me the names of your brothers and sisters, and then your years of birth, so that we can kind of keep them in order, like the oldest to the youngest?
yeah, my mother, my oldest sister, Mabel Chizuko Miyagishima, Yokoi, her maiden name. And I think she was born in 1920 or 21. And she was the eldest of us. But my parents had lost two boys in infancy, and they felt that it was during the period where they had a lot of flu. And my older brother, Ed Miyagishima, he was drafted in camp into the military. And after basic training, they sent him to the military intelligence language school. And this was the end of 44. And as far as I can recall, that might have been the last class. And so when he was sent to Japan, he was with the criminal investigation. And so his job was to interrogate the Japanese officers that they had imprisoned. And actually, before he went to Japan, he's the only one that saw my dad first before he went to Japan. Anyway, so he spent his appointed time there.
Any other siblings?
And my sister Gladys Tokie Miyagishima, she was born in 1930. And she lived in California, mostly in the San Jose area.
So are you the youngest, or?
No. There's me, and then I was born October 2nd, 1932.
Okay.
And went to Manual High School here in Denver. And when I graduated there, I went to Mercy Hospital School of Nursing. Graduated in 1954. And had different jobs in my career, but I worked as an occupational health nurse with the telephone company. And they sent me to University Hospital to get my adult practitioner. And that was 1979, because we did physical assessments and all. And my little sister, Betsy Fukiko Miyagishima Quinlan.
Okay.
Yeah, and she was born in 1935. And she lives in California. She had gone to a couple of universities in California, had a degree, and she worked for, I think her last job was with Boeing, and she had a very good career, I think. So she still lives there. She lives in Palos Verdes,
Okay.
Rancho.
Maybe we can get her contact, and we can talk to her too. Thank you. Maybe let's. Do you have a story from camp that you just like to share with people? Is there something that you remember most of all your stories?
Well, one of the things I always remember is there was a mountain there. Not a real high mountain, but it was sloped like a theater. And they used to have plays and movies there. So we'd take our army blankets and nigiri and stuff, and the difference in hot and cold, gets pretty extreme there. So we'd bring our bento box and sit there and watch a movie, and pretty soon here comes the water coming down from the water tank they had was sitting up there. And, it's made out of wood, and the wood swells and shrinks. So at night when it gets colder, it shrinks. Or I don't know if the other way around, but then the water would come out and everybody's jumping up, screaming and stuff. I always remember that. It was such a panic for us, It didn't always happen, but it happened.
How did they show movies? Did they have a big screen or?
Yeah, they had a stage, and they used to have plays, but mostly movies, because I think when they did plays, it was always inside, as I remember. And, I think we had wonderful teachers, we used to call from the outside. And I think they were a whole lot in us growing up. Because like my mother worked in the mess hall, but she didn't work 8 to 5. It seemed like she was always working in the mess hall. And one of the things I remember about the mess hall, they had this huge galvanized garbage can. Do you remember those? They were kind of ripply on the outside, and it was filled with ice water. And the spigot was on the outside, so if you wanted a drink of good water, that's where you got. But we were told if you were bit by a scorpion or a rattlesnake, you put a tourniquet on and have someone carry you to the mess hall so you could get the ice cold water on before you go to the, they didn't call it hospital, but the infirmary or whatever they had. And that was one of the things that we had to learn that was important, because
a lot of scorpions.
we did have scorpions and rattlesnakes that came into the camp, and we had to be really careful. Gila monsters and stuff.
I think the scorpions were saying, "Who let all these people into my house?"
Yeah, what are they doing here?
Okay. Thank you so much. I really wanted to just capture that story about